We are live. Hello everyone and welcome to Wineless YouTube Live. It is the June tasting. So basically today we're going to be tasting our June wines. So we've got Le Chappé Belle from Domaine Odyssée, and we've also got Alvinho, and this is my voice in the background. You just want double me, that's fine. But anyway, I'm Isabelle, I'm head of wine at Winelist, and it is lovely to have you join us for our tasting. So if you are brand new, no problem. We're basically just going through our tasting card, the back of the tasting card. We won't really talk about that because we have the winemakers joining us tonight, which is really, really exciting. So we have Vincent from Domaine Odyssée with our white wine, and we have Lucia and Americo from our second wine in Portugal. So they'll be there in the comments saying hello. Oh, you can already see MG Blends Wine, that's them. Hello. Very, very nice to see you. So you can ask away with any questions. But we're basically deep diving into our wines, looking about what they taste like for our wines of the month, why they taste like that, and most importantly, whether we like them or not. Don't worry, you don't have to be biased because Vincent, Lucia and Americo are here. So let's get started. I don't like to hold you back in drinking wine. But the first bottle, if you want to pour it out into your glass, swill it around a little bit, and what you might want to do with this wine, again, like we tend to do with most of our white wines, is warm it up in the palm of your hand a little bit. It is very warm today. Don't know if anyone else has noticed that, but it takes a lot longer for your white wine to chill down in the fridge if you have it standing in the room, so it's sort of 25 degrees. And then you put it in the fridge, and that's sort of half an hour in the fridge, that is usually fine. It only goes down to about 15 degrees when it's in the fridge for half an hour in this heat. But I'm really glad, because the warmer your wine is, the more you can taste. So, our first wine it's based in the very, very south of France, so in Roussillon, and it's just near Perpignan. Shall I show you a little map anyway? This is our map. So you can see Domaine Odyssée is at the very, very south, so it's very near the border with Spain, to be honest. And because you're in this part of France, what's really lovely is it's very, very dry. There's very little humidity. There is very little rain. There's a lot of sunshine. So that means that you can have an organic vineyard, and the reason why is because when you have a vineyard sort of further north in a lot more heat, you get, well, no, not a lot more heat, but with a lot more rain, that means that you get a lot more moisture going into the air and evaporating, so you get a lot of humidity. When the air is damp, it breeds mold and bacteria, so you often find that in other climates you have to put a lot of sprays, a lot of chemical sprays, a lot of pesticides just to keep your vines safe. But when you're in this dry, arid climate, you don't have any of that, so it means you can be really organic, not use any chemicals at all, and have a lovely sort of chemical-free wine, chemical-free vineyard, which means that the biodiversity can just do really well. And when you have really good biodiversity in your vineyard, lots of little insects and plants and animals growing everywhere, it in turn nourishes and feeds back into the soil and in turn the vine as well. So it's this whole sort of life cycle, so everything is working together. And what's nice about the two wines that we have this evening is both of them are exactly like that. They're in really dry, arid conditions, which means that you don't need to use any chemicals. It's all good. So, oh, I can see Vincent in the comments. Hello, bonjour. What's exciting about Vincent's wines is I got carried away. We actually got 3 of them because they're so good. But on the bottles, you'll notice that all 3 of them have beautiful, beautiful labels. So Le Chappé Belle. Le Chappé Belle is sort of it's describing, the name of it is describing Vincent's life basically. So he loves to travel. When he finished his studies, he went travelling, travelled around the world and sort of fell in love with wine. He was never in wine before then, but he worked on vineyards in New Zealand, in Bordeaux, in Argentina. So he's learnt winemaking in so many different places, different climates, different grape varieties and different traditions, and he's brought them all back. He bought a really little plot of land, and he's only been growing grapes since about 2014, and in 2014 he started with 500 bottles. bought a little bit more land, bought a little bit more land, and he's grown now, so he's got 10,000 bottles a year that he produces. And not only that, he's got a full-time job working in another vineyard, another winery. And then this is just his sort of weekend project. It's this project of love that he has. He's always wanted to do this. So this is basically just a produce of Vincent's spare time, to be honest. I don't know how he fits in having a vineyard in a spare time. It's absolutely mad. But each of Vincent's bottles have a lovely story behind them. This one has the most beautiful landscape on the front, and he likes to joke when people ask, oh, where's the picture taken? He likes to joke that it's just by Perpignan, because it's on the very coast. He's like, oh, it's just down the road. It's not. It's in California. So one of Vincent's many friends from when he was travelling took this photo on his iPhone. Is this an advert, a plug for iPhones? Maybe. And so that is his iPhone, and it's the most beautiful picture of a coast in California, not France. But it's showing how global wine is, because when you're picking up how to make wine from different places on the globe, it can sort of add to your own traditions in your own country and region. So I will show you. Shall I show you a little video of Vincent? So there's the map of France anyway. And here is, I hope this works, but here is Vincent. I really hope you can hear this. So that was Vincent. No one could actually hear that, and I don't know why. So I'm going to put that video up on our Instagram tomorrow so you can hear it. But it's lovely, Vincent. Thank you so much for sending that video. I tested that earlier, so that should have worked. I'm really sorry, but I'm not very great at sound quality apparently. But you can see it tomorrow. So it's basically Vincent. He's actually on the vineyard there where the Macabeo grapes are grown. So it's exactly where this bottle of wine has come from, to be honest. And you can see the beautiful, beautiful sunshine, intense heat in that part of France. And that is what Macabeo loves. So shall we taste it and find out about Macabeo? Famously, Macabeo it's actually called Viura in some parts, especially it's Macabeo, Viura. It just depends whereabouts you are and what you call it. But Viura is most famously known in Rioja. So if you've ever had white Rioja, Viura is one of the main grape varieties behind that. Here in the south of France, it's not actually that far away. It's just over the border, to be honest. But it's very rare, not very rarely, but rarely grown in the south of France. And it makes beautiful, plump wines, high acidity, like good for aging. So we'll taste it and we'll break it down. We'll see what Macabeo is all about. This is a very good way to learn about Macabeo as a grape because it's aged inside stainless steel. So we call stainless steel inox in France, which is a much nicer word than stainless steel. And it's made inside inox stainless steel tanks, which means that you keep the really sort of fresh fruit. And you don't change the grape in any way. It's grape in its purest form. So the first thing we're going to look at is, on our tasting card, on this side, is the colour, which is really easy. You just hold it up over your piece of paper and have a look over the top. And can you see how light in colour that one is? Incredibly light, which is telling us about the wine already. So we already know it's not going to be this big sort of plump aged wine. It's going to be cleaner, fresher. And interestingly, when you have this Macabeo against other Macabeo / Viura in Rioja, and it's white Rioja, they tend to age them for a really long time, and that's when you can sort of see them really changing in colour. They go from this to far more gold and more concentrated, which is the opposite way round to red wines, where they sort of lose colour as you're drinking them. So, tannins we can ignore as usual because white wine doesn't have any tannin. We'll look at that with our red. But the acidity on this one is, we'll do the dribble test like usual. So those of you who've joined us before, by the way, you're all saying hello in the comments. Hello everyone, it's lovely to see you all. But if you haven't done the dribble test before or tested your acidity inside wine, it's one of the most important things inside wine. It's what makes your wine feel fresh, drinkable, and exactly what you want on a hot day like today. So you take a sip, swallow it straight away, and then open your mouth, tilt your head forward like this, and count how many seconds it takes for your mouth to start really watering, and basically how many seconds until you have to close your mouth before you'll dribble on yourself. So that was almost straight away. 2 seconds. It was definitely not quite 1 second. That's like New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc category, 1 second immediate. That was a second delay and then boom, straight in, and that 2 seconds there. Does everyone agree? Oh, and got 4 seconds. You know what, if you are slightly different with how many seconds you get, it does sometimes depend on how hydrated you are today. So I've been drinking lots of water. Oh, Fiona has not been drinking much water at all. You'll probably be mouth watering after about 10 seconds here. Oh, 4 seconds everyone's saying, everyone's agreeing. Maybe even longer. Well, it is a hot day, so I will say that maybe it's the dehydration from that. But it is quite fast still. It's definitely not medium acidity. Medium acidity would be when it's sort of quite a delay before your mouth waters. It's definitely not high acidity because it's New Zealand Sauvignon. This is sort of medium high, so I'd say a sort of 7 or 8 out of 10. You know what, I'm going to say 8 out of 10. I think it's high acidity. It's really, really refreshing. Makes your mouth water. Oh, Pedro says hello from Portugal. Hello. Oh, Emma's saying 3, Holly's saying 3. Yeah, I feel like 3 is the right point. I have been hydrating way too much today, so maybe I'm just dribbly today. No, I'm not dribbly, promise. So, the next thing we'll look at is the sweetness, and this is basically whether how much sugar is inside the wine. So Macabeu it's grown in a hot climate, so because when you're grown in a hotter climate, what happens is you have lots of UV rays going onto your grape. And the higher percentage of UV rays you have in your grape, it increases a certain chemical compound inside it, which makes you increase your perception of tropical fruit flavours. So as you're tasting this, you might think, oh, that's quite tropical, quite juicy, quite peachy and fresh. And that might trick you into thinking, therefore it must be sweet and sugary like all those tropical fruits are. But completely dry wine, this one. If you want to do the thing where you, if you pinch your nose, then take a sip and see how different it is then. And you'll notice that when you don't use your nose, you can't taste the sweetness anymore. And it's because 90% of how we taste wine is just coming from our sense of smell. So as soon as you take that away, the wine tastes completely different. So that's always a good test to use when you want to measure sweetness inside your wine, I think. It's you can also do it with basil, where you put a bit of basil in your mouth and then chew it. You can taste basil. Pinch your nose, you can't taste any basil at all, and it's because you're not using your nose. All the taste in basil is actually coming from the smell. And as soon as you release your nose again, you can taste the basil again straight away. So if you do have any basil, you can try that. And you can try it with your wine and realise how important our noses are. So, what's interesting about the vineyard down here? So, Vincent is changing up a lot of his wines, and because he's only new, so he started in 2014 and he's been growing so quickly and so much, he is planting new vineyards and new grapes and going for things that are a bit different for France. When you think of France, you always think of Chardonnay, you think of classic Bordeaux wines, you think of Beaujolais, but Vincent, the next vineyard that he's just planted, he's just finished doing it, is Xarel·lo. And Xarel·lo is a northern Spanish grape that often goes into cava, and he's just planted a whole field of this, so he's hoping to create Jarello wines in the south of France, which is unheard of really. You never get it in the south of France. It tends to be countries sort of stick to their own grape varieties usually. I mean, as we'll see in the next wine. But what's good about this is Vincen's just planted it, and now he has to be patient and wait 3 whole years before that is producing grapes that he can harvest. So as soon as you plant a vine, it's already about that high when you plant it. They grow them in nurseries, and you buy them in from the nurseries, plant them in your field, and then they sort of take off. Then what happens is all the deer are very, very lovely to look at deer and see them prancing around, but they eat all of the baby vines, which is very, very annoying and time consuming and expensive. So if your vines all survive that, after 3 whole years, it will start to produce grapes that can be used to make wine. After those 3 years, it's still a very young vine. So it sort of reaches its peak at about 10, 20 years. It gets really good at sort of the age of 40. And then you have very few vineyards that are sort of aged 100 years or over. Very, very few. It's incredibly rare to have that. But Vincent is so excited about the next wines that he wants to come up with. But the really interesting thing that he told me, which I've never thought about before, is that when I make a decision that I want to buy a wine, I buy it and it comes next week like magic, and it's wonderful and I don't have to be patient. But when you're a winemaker, you have to, as soon as you have an idea for a wine, you have to wait for the right season to plant. You have to wait for another 3 years for it to grow, to harvest. And once you've picked all those grapes, you have to wait probably about another year, sometimes even 5 years, until you can start drinking that wine. So Vincent is saying that he has 1,000 ideas a day. As soon as he plants something, he can already see in his mind what bottle he wants, what the name of it is, what the label's going to look like. And he has to wait so many years and be that patient before he can actually come up with the wine. And when he thought about it, he thought, I've only probably got 40 years in my lifetime of working on the vineyard. So that's only 40 harvests he can do. And you see some winemakers who are making the same wine every single year, but if you're like Vincent, you're super creative and want to create all these different wines, you've got to work so fast because you're only limited to 40 a year. It would never work for us impatient people. It'd be terrible. I don't know how they would do it. So, this is exciting. Vincent's saying Jarello is coming. Anne says, oh my God, it tastes of nothing. Every day is a learning day. Every day is a learning day. Did you try it with the basil? I hope she did. I feel like Anne's the type of person to have a basil plant in the kitchen. I kill mine all the time. I wish I could, but there we go. So, body in this wine. I don't know if you've noticed, but because we're all in I'm assuming you're all in hot rooms unless anyone has air conditioning, and then in which case I'm coming over. But with this wine, you'll have noticed that when you have a small amount in a glass like this, it heats up very, very quickly. And that is why when you see people selling red wine glasses and white wine glasses, the white wine glasses are usually smaller. It's one of the many, many reasons for the science behind wine glasses. But when you have a smaller glass, you put less in it. This is why I only have big glasses, but you put less in it, and that means that you drink it at the same speed. But you don't have wine in there sort of warming up for too long. It means that you can have the perfect temperature when you pour it in, and you sort of drink that within 10 minutes, and then pour another glass of the perfect temperature wine. If you pour a really big glass of wine, it's a bit too cold, and then everything else is just a bit too warm for such a long time. So that's why we just pour a little bit, especially on hot days or in warm, warm rooms. But what is interesting with body is that you'll notice the body a lot more the warmer you have it. So if you do have a slightly warm glass now, you can just hold it and feel it. If it just feels slightly less than room temperature, it's probably still a bit too warm maybe. But you'll notice more body inside it. So body is about how the wine feels. If it feels like skimmed milk, like water, clean, cuts through, very light, it means it's light body. And if it's sits rich, round and heavy, it means it's full bodied. What do you think the body is like on this one? I think when I first had this, I had it very cold straight out of the fridge. I thought, What a clean, fresh wine, very summery. When you have it slightly warmer, you notice a little bit extra body behind it, a bit of plumpness. That's not coming from the stainless steel aging because that keeps it very fresh. But that's coming from Macabeo itself. It's a little bit of a, I always feel like it has a little bit of richness behind it, a little bit of depth and body naturally. Only a tiny bit, but I feel like that's the sort of, what's everyone else thinking in the comments? 3 out of 10? Yeah, Rachel says medium light. I feel like that's a 3 out of 10, definitely. So, actually, now that we've said all about our bottles, we were discussing this earlier, but if you made your own bottle, what picture would you put on it as the label? Fiona just went, my face. Fiona would put her face. I'd buy that, that'd be really nice. But yeah, you can let me know. What picture would you put on your bottle? It doesn't have to be a picture, but I'm going to go with picture. I think that's a really nice way of doing it. A lovely sort of landscape. I'd probably go with lovely Wakefield. Very nice. Me and Jane McDonald. So Andrew's saying medium, Hannah's saying medium light. I like that you've all noticed that little bit of warmth, depth, body. Yeah, Rachel agrees with that little bit of warmth. So Emily's going to put a cat on hers. I like that. I'd buy that as well. You know what? I went to a wine tasting recently and so many of the wines had dogs on the bottle and I was drawn to every single one of them. I think it's a really good marketing ploy, just putting pets on a bottle. That, I think, yeah, I'd probably do that as well. So, what are you thinking for the finish? This is the most important thing. To be honest, I can't believe I've left this to the last because usually as soon as I try a new wine, I taste it and the first thing I think of is the finish because it's the most important thing for judging the quality of a wine. If it's a very short finish, it'll be sort of 2 seconds. It means that you taste the wine, swallow it. How long does that flavour last afterwards? If it's 2 seconds, it's crap. If it's 5 seconds, it's getting good. 7 seconds is good. 10 seconds is wonderful. A really outstanding wine. And it's all about how well the winemaker looks after their vines, how well they look after the grapes when they're handling them in the winery. So yeah, let me know how many seconds. Lex says, Clive said he put a picture of me. Oh, that's so sweet. So how many seconds have you got on this one? I think this one's lasting a really nice amount of time. When we move on to our aromas, which we'll do so in a second, we'll look at each circle in turn. So we'll do the left-hand circle first, and then we'll move into the right-hand circle. But I'll explain it quickly in case you've never seen them before. So the left-hand circle is every single wine will have something from here. It's your fruit aromas, a little bit of floral as well. Every single bottle of wine that you'll ever open will taste of fruit. Not that it has any fruit inside it, but it will taste of it. It's because of the chemical compounds when you break a wine down, each of the chemical compounds, like citronelle. Your brain cleverly goes, that is the same chemical compound that's found inside, that I can taste inside this wine. So your brain matches it up and goes, this wine tastes like lemons. So that's what we're looking for. If anyone's having any difficulty with smelling what's inside your wine, the only thing I would say is have 2 glasses on the go. As soon as you have 2 wine glasses, you stop smelling just grapes and stop smelling just alcohol, and you can start to smell and notice the difference, the different fruit flavours going on inside it. So that's the first circle, and that's the one we'll look at straight away, but you can start letting me know. But what's everyone thinking with the finish? Ooh, I think you've all said about the same thing. Yeah, everyone said between 7 and 10 seconds, which is absolutely what I agree with. I in fact put 9. There's an 8/9, but I rounded it up. Definitely 9. Really long finish to that. When you sort of have, when you go back and check all your wines now and look at the finish behind them, you'll notice all my Aldi wines are sort of a 4/5. Then pub wines are usually a 2. Maybe I should change what pub wines I'm drinking or what pubs I'm drinking at. But this wine is such a long finish. We're almost at the end of the scale at 10. I mean, when you get past the scale of 10, it doesn't just drop off. You can go even longer, but most wines that you drink fall into that 0 to 10 scale. So this is really incredible. That's all the way up to 9. It means it's been so well looked after. So we have, oh, I love how everyone's making friends in the chat. This is my favourite. So what are the flavours that you're getting inside your wine? Swill it round inside your glass, warm it up if you just poured a little bit out, and by swilling it you're releasing more aromas, so you're just mixing up the wine with the air, it's all drifting into your glass, and again the science behind the glass, it's tapered so it's keeping all of those aromas inside there for you. So when you put your nose to it, wonderful, wonderful aromas coming out. And that's again why our glass is shaped like this, because going back to when you don't use your nose and you can't really taste much after that, your nose perfectly fits inside a glass just as you take a sip. And just as you take a sip, if you notice as you're sipping now, you'll notice you're inhaling slightly through your nose that split second before you take a sip of wine. And your brain is working incredibly fast. It's processing that sense of smell, that aroma, before the wines even hit your taste buds. So before you even sip it or taste it, your brain is already making up a picture of what it thinks it's going to taste. And I mean, you can taste it as well. So what are you smelling? What are you tasting? Emily said floral. Yes. I think it's sort of not like a heavy floral. It feels very light, like white flowers, like elderflower, not sort of geraniums. Tim's getting spice, maybe from what he ate. What did you eat? I'm not quite getting spice, maybe a bit of herbal quality though, sort of. Oh, this is a really pretentious one. I was going to say tarragon. I'll go with the pretentious one. But that's sort of a little bit of spice. I will just say I used to work in a restaurant as a sommelier, so I had to know all the spices, because otherwise the chefs would shout at me. Emily says, melon, lemon zest. Yes, absolutely. Anne is making friends with Lex. Yes. Sam and Charlotte are saying tropical fruits. So again, yes, tropical fruits, so melon and stone fruits. So what's really interesting is because we're in the very south of France, we're getting more of the UV rays. So we're getting a lot of concentration inside our grape of those tropical fruit flavours. So you're completely right with stone fruits. As soon as I smelt it, I thought peaches, actually just a whole swoop of the bottom row to be honest. Lemon, lime, peach, apricot, nectarine, lychee. You can add on melon. This is why the notes are there at the bottom, so you can add on more fruits. We could have put all the fruits in the world on this circle, but it would have been a very, very small font. Andrew is also saying peach, lime, and pineapple. Yeah, I get what you're going with pineapple. Yeah, like a pineapple melon blend. Oh, Emma's agreeing with that as well. Yeah, absolutely. Elderflower and lychee, says Holly. Yes, definitely. And Anne has gone on to our next circle, and this is what we'll talk about now. I love what I really like about this wine. So when you look at qualities of wine, I've got 4 things, and one of them, you need to tick all 4 things basically. We'll talk about all of them, but to get an outstanding wine, and one of them is definitely depth of flavour. And depth of flavour is how many you're writing on your list. If you can only write sort of 3, like lemon, apple and peach, it's a simple wine. This has huge depth of flavour. There's so many things going on inside this, which is wonderful. And the other one, so that's one, the second one is complexity, and that is all about the second circle. So the second circle are all the weird, bizarre aromas, and that's when a winemaker makes a choice to do something to their wine to get some more unusual aromas coming out of it, to add extra layers on top of it each time. And has anyone else said it as well? No, not yet. Anne said it though. Minerality. Minerality is such an odd thing in wines because no one talked about minerality until the year 1980. And ever since the 1980s, people have gone, oh, minerality, yeah, it's definitely a thing inside wine. It's a very contentious issue because it's all about where does your minerality come from and what is minerality? It's basically, if you've ever licked a rock, licked metal, that's minerality. That's the only way you can describe the taste. It tastes like metal, it tastes like flint, it tastes like stone. I always think it tastes like, like the hot stone pavement after the rain comes, and it's that smell, minerality. So winemakers always talk about minerality coming from their soils and their soil variety, the nutrients inside their soil. And there's been so many scientific studies to figure out where this exactly is coming from, and no one really knows for sure. It's a very tricky subject. People have said that minerality doesn't come from the soil, but every single winemaker you talk to says their minerality is coming from the soil, so surely something is happening here. There's been studies where people have taken 3 pots next to each other of exactly the same vine with different soil varieties inside it and tested the sap of the plant to see if there's any chemical difference inside it, and they did notice a bit of a difference. So the whole chemical structure and makeup of the plant has changed, so therefore the grapes must absorb that somehow and have that minerality. Minerality is always talked about in Burgundy, further north in France, in Chablis. Chablis is like that classic flinty wine. And when I tasted this, I thought, it reminds me of Chablis a little bit in that sort of flinty, clean way, a tiny bit of body in those sort of lovely plump Chablis. But like a southern version of a Chablis, because Chablis is very much sort of clean Granny Smith apples because it's so far north, it's cooler climate. But because we're so far south, it's like a Chablis, but with tropical fruits, peaches, stone fruits. It's plumper and juicier, this one. But still, that clean minerality. Oh, Lex has said lemon curd. You know what? That's a really interesting one, because whenever you talk about Macabeu, people talk about lemon curd because the classic white Rioja is that sort of lemon curd flavour. So yes, spot on. Wonderful. So, what is everyone's verdict on that one? You've got a little smiley, well, you've got blank face in the corner. You can put a smiley face if you like it, a sad face if you don't like it, a confused face if you're confused about minerality like we all are. But I'm putting a very big smiley face. There we go. And now that's good because you know if you liked the wine or not. You know what you liked inside the wine. You can look at each of the characteristics, figure out if you like body inside white wine, if you like lots of acidity or not much acidity, and you can use these to go back to them in the future to figure out what sort of wine you want. So, is anyone having food with this tonight? Because I did say food risotto to go with this nicely. Yeah. Tahini. That's only because we had some tahini in our dinner. I didn't make it, as Fiona. I don't use tahini. I'm northern. So, we're going to be moving on to our next wine, but thank you so much to Vincent for coming to join us, for saying hello to us as well. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm sorry your video didn't work, but I'll pop it on the Instagram tomorrow, so it's a win-win. If you don't have an Instagram, I will just email it to you, no problem. Let me know. Oh, Hannah liked it. Oh, quite liked it. Oh, okay, I'll take the quite. But you know what? I think this is, I wouldn't enjoy this in the middle of winter, but my God, I think this is such a summer wine. It feels so clean and acidity and summery. Ben had it with baked camembert and rosemary. The acidity of that will just cut right through. That'll be wonderful. Oh, and Sadhana said, perfect for summer evenings. That's exactly what I think as well. So, we will be moving on to our second wine, and we will also be joined by Americo and Lucia Ferez in Portugal. They have already had, both of our winemakers are very similar in terms of all of them have full-time jobs and do wine in their spare time. So I don't know how they do this, but it's wonderful. But thank you so much for joining us and using up your very limited spare time to join us. But the next wine is Alvinho. And this one is, it's classic Portuguese grape varieties, which are Touriga Nacional, Touriga Franca, Touriga Tinta Roriz and Tinta Barroca. Classic grape varieties in Portugal. And as we were talking about in France, when you have sort of traditions within a country, within a region, people tend to stick to the wines from their region. But as you can see, sort of looking at the landscape of wine and how fashion has changed over the years, very much sort of from the late 70s, people started planting international grape varieties. And when I say international grape varieties, the grape varieties that you immediately think of when you think of wine. Syrah, Shiraz, Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc. These are all what we call very international grape varieties because they are grown everywhere in the, bless you, they are grown everywhere in the world, on every single continent, so many different climates, any climate where it can grow. But what I love about Portugal is that they've never gone with this trend. Every single country was growing Chardonnay in the 1990s because that was the thing to do. They all ripped up their own grape varieties and planted in international ones to sort of feed the fashion of the day. But in Portugal, they've really stuck to their own. They've kept their own grape varieties, and that's what's done wonders for them now, because they're not just selling another, I don't want to slate Sauvignon Blanc again, because I feel like I always do. I still love it, sorry, Sauvignon. But they're sticking to their own, and they're known for their wines. They're known for their specific grape varieties. Even though I say you haven't had any of them outside Portugal, apart from one. So Touriga Nacional is the main one in Portugal. It's low yielding, it's a bit difficult to manage, but it produces wonderful, deeply coloured, plump, juicy wines. Then you've got Touriga Franco, which is all blackberry. It's a little bit floral, like a Malbec or a Zinfandel. So again, plump, full-bodied, deep in colour. And then Tinta Roriz is actually known by a different name. It's also known as Tempranillo. And where do you know Tempranillo from? Rioja. We've got a lovely tie-in with these. So Tinta Roriz is known as Tinta Roriz in Portugal. It's known as Tempranillo in Spain, where it's put into Rioja. It's usually the main grape variety inside Rioja. And so we all know it really well. It makes lovely sort of medium body, medium acidity, medium tannin, lots of juicy red fruits. That's a classic Tempranillo. And the last one is Tinta Barroca, which is the most common one found inside northern Portugal, really. But I'll show you a little map. So this is our map of Portugal. And as you can see, we're quite far north inside Portugal. So the last Portuguese wine that you had, which was, February, March, it was March. That was much, much further south, closer to Lisbon. And here we are in the north, quite inland as well. So Douro Valley is a very, very famous region in Portugal. It's the one that most people know. And Douro Valley it's sort of just further north than where we are in Ferez. And it's just above where we are. So even though we are north, near Douro Valley, where it's known for very, very plump wines, because we're so much further inland, it's changing the wine already. So Douro Valley is famous for all these grape varieties. It's famous for very big, full-bodied, big wines. Whenever you go to the supermarket, these days you always tend to see a Portuguese wine, which is exciting. And it's almost always Douro Valley, and it's almost always very, very full-bodied and big. But we'll pour this out and we'll see the difference. So we'll look at the colour first. I'll let you take a sip now. But hold your piece of paper and hold your wine over the top, and we're going to look at the colour of it first, because it's going to tell us so much about the wine before we even sip it. So look at the very centre of the wine. Be careful you don't spill it, just hold it at 45 degrees. But look at the colour of the centre of the wine compared to the outer ring. And notice that there's barely any difference in the colour there. Usually when you have a much sort of lighter in colour wine, there's a huge colour change between the two. It's very transparent. This one, as you hold it, be very careful, but pass your hand through the other side and try and see if you can see your hand. If you can see your hand, usually means it's quite light in colour and light in body sometimes. If you can kind of see your hand, it's medium. If you cannot see your hand at all, like this, can anyone see their hands? No, it means it's really, really intense in colour, and it's probably most likely going to be quite full-bodied as well. So you can't always rely on that, because some wines do tend to trick you, but it is one of the good things, one of the reasons why we look at wine. So the next thing we'll look at is the tannin. So cheers everyone. Notice how much it's drying your teeth and your gums and your, well, not teeth, but your tongue. Oh, it's got a lovely amount of tannin, doesn't it? Yeah, Rachel just put blimey. I agree, Rachel, blimey. And that's what Portuguese wines are about. They're big, they're intense, they're full-bodied, and sometimes they are too much. This one is not, and that's because it's grown so far inland. It doesn't have any interference from the sea, so it doesn't have any differences in climate. When you're really near the sea, near the Atlantic coast, you get lots of wind, lots of cooling breezes, lots of rain, lots of storms. And that's why the Portuguese vineyards on the coast and much sort of cooler in temperature. As you go inland, it should get hotter. Douro Valley, very hot ones, but we've gone so far inland and a little bit further south. We're in Beira Interior, which is further south than Douro Valley. It's its own winemaking region, and it's up in the mountains, it's up in the hills. And this means that you've got altitude. Altitude is so important in wine because once you have altitude, it means that as soon as you travel upwards, up a mountain or up a hill, as we've all probably done at some point, you notice how much colder it is up there. And that's what it's going to do with our grapes. It's going to keep them a little bit cooler, a little bit fresher. So what we're looking for is when you ripen a grape, it loses acidity and gains sweetness. Well, gains sugar. We'll say sugar. So what do you think the acidity is like with this wine? Do the dribble test again. Be very careful because it'll probably stain this one if you dribble on yourself. But have a sip, tilt your head forward like this. What is the acidity like? What's everyone saying? Hannah's asked, is Douro the same as Douro? No, very similar names though. It gets very complicated in winemaking regions because they all sound like the same name. Oh, actually, you know what? Double check me on that, someone. I'm pretty sure it's not. But I don't want to take that for fact now. Now I'm questioning myself. Hannah said medium-high tannins. Do I read that out? Yeah, I'll read that out. Holly said she thick. She is. That's so funny. She is. But what is the acidity like? So tannins are sort of medium-high, 6 or 7 out of 10. Probably 7 out of 10. My mouth is really drying out. What is the acidity like on this one? I'll test it with you. Three, 4 seconds? Do you all agree? Yeah, Tim's on 4, 5. Anne's on 3. Yeah, you agree? Yeah. Pretty high acidity. Again, not as high acidity as the last one. The last one, did you notice that is a bit faster on the last one? Denise said 5. Yeah, probably right point. Which means it's sort of medium, around the medium level but with a bit extra. Quite often with Portuguese wines, you have lots of body, lots of tannin. And the thing that sometimes holds rubbish wines back in Portugal, the less good ones, is that they don't have the acidity to match up. When we're looking at our 4 things of how you measure a good quality wine, we looked at the first 2 already. We looked at depth of flavour, we looked at complexity of flavour. The third one is balance, and in order for your wine to feel balanced, you want to line up your tannin, acidity and body just nicely. You also want to balance the flavour as well. We'll talk about flavour later. So we've got our tannin, we've got our acidity just almost the same level, and we want our body to be around the same level as well to make it a really enjoyable type of wine. When you tweak these levels, you can change it depending on what style of wine you want, but if you're way out and don't have any acidity, it means it's really out of balance. So because we have tannin, 6 out of 10, and well 7 out of 10, and acidity is sort of 5, 6 out of 10, it means that it's a wine that's made for food. So if you have any food with you, this is a perfect wine for that. When you have it slightly higher acidity, it means you can just drink it and drink loads. When you have the tannin slightly higher, it means that you want food with it. And that's because when you have anything salty or fatty, if you're in your kitchen, just dab a bit of salt in your tongue and try your wine after that. You'll notice that salt softens tannins. They're a perfect combination. Emily said, weird question. I'm going to have a look at this. She said, maybe our wine glasses, but does anybody else's wine look glittery? I don't think so. Does yours? I think it might be your glasses. I would love I was really hoping for a yes. It's what, sorry? Crystals? Could well be crystals, actually. Near the bottom of the bottle. Sometimes you get tartrate build-up at the very bottom, turns into crystals. 'Cause sometimes you sort of, you know, when you pick out the cork and you look at the very, very bottom of the cork when you pull it out and it's covered in little crystals. And we do have some. If you have a look at your cork now, oh God, thanks so much, Fiona Wine List. She's doing my job for me. But if you pull out your cork now, have a look on the red wine side of it and hold it up to the light, and you'll notice there's a little bit of almost sparkle to it. So that will be going into your wine as well. So it's tiny, tiny little crystals. Oh, thank you so much, Pedro, for coming in with your Spanish knowledge. So Duero and Douro are the same river, I think, from reading the comment very quickly. Phew, thank you so much, Pedro. Thank you for being here. And speaking of which, let's talk about the Ferez family. So they are, Americo and Lucia are dentists. The vineyard was, it's up in the hills in a very, very little village. And the village is called Valflor, beautiful little old stone buildings, old stone houses. And where the vineyard is, it used to be a field for cereals. So they're growing cereal on it. And Americo's father, he decided he wanted to plant grapes, and he put so much hard work and effort into planting all these vines, took care of them over years and years and years. So they're quite old now. And when Americo and Lucia took over the vineyard, because they're full-time dentists, they brought on the help of an oenologist, who is a sort of oenologist means that you're a winemaker, you know about wine, you know about grapes. And they brought him on to sort of help. It's Pedro Branco. And he looked at these vineyards and was taken aback. He thought, oh my goodness, these are incredibly well looked after vines. Who planted these? Who's been looking after these for the past few decades? And it's because of all the work that Americo's father put into these fields. They're really well looked after. And Americo and Lucia are very, very fun people. Lucia's the kind of woman you just want to go for lunch with her, and then stay for dinner, and then be adopted by her as well. And they're very, very funny. And Lucia, she drives out to the countryside every weekend to visit the vines, see how everything's going. She likes to be very, very busy, and she's such a storyteller as well. She loves to tell you a story, she loves to tell you everything. And she goes to visit her vines and she tells them to grow. And apparently when you speak to vines, well, when you speak to any plants, I think Prince Charles does the same. He talks to his plants. A lot of farmers I know speak to their plants because it helps them to grow. They listen to you. You can also sing to them and sing songs, but we might not go that far. So all these vines are very, very well looked after, which means that they're going to produce a good quality grape. And also, because you have such little rainfall in this region, it's very, very dry. In summer, you barely get any rain at all. And it means that you get water stress on the grapes. And what happens is when the grapes are slightly stressed from water, they stop getting bigger and they actually stay the same size, but concentrate all their flavours. They have less water inside them. So it's like having a lovely diluted Ribena and then taking the water out of it. It's going back to that concentrated cordial almost. So this is what's happening to the grapes, and this is what's happening to the wine as well. Oh, that's why it's so concentrated and deep. All the grape varieties are adding to it, plus all of the water stress and the heat and sunshine. So what is the body like on this one? Sweetness is dry, by the way. It's because all the sugar in the grape has been eaten by yeast and turned into alcohol, which we know because, have you seen how much alcohol percentage is on it? If you haven't looked yet, what you can do is you can guess. So when you take a sip of wine, notice the little burn in the back of your throat here, like when you drink a whiskey, and you'll be able to tell the exact percentage based on that little burn. You can train yourself up to do it, don't you worry. A few practices and you'll have got it. It's a fun pub game. But what do you think this is? What percentage? I'm feeling the burn. It's 14%, this one. Very well, don't know if you got that right. But you'll notice that it's a really high alcohol wine. It's because all that sugar has been produced from this hot region. The sugar has been converted into alcohol, and that's why you have so much alcohol in here. So I just really like Rachel's comment in caps lock saying, "Where are my diamonds?" Sorry, Rachel, we'll send them over. I'll send you some of the glitter from mine. It's on my hands. So body with this one, where do we think it is? Oh, Sam and Charlotte, guess 14 to 15%. Very well done. I'm going to believe that you haven't looked at the bottle as well. I fully trust you. So what is the body like? So we had our tannins at a 7 out of 10, our acidity at that 6 out of 10. I think body is, dare I say, 8 out of 10. It feels rich and rounded. Imagine those glasses of milk again. Is it like skimmed milk? Is it like full fat milk? Ignore the flavours, ignore the tannin, ignore everything else. Body is just about mouthfeel. How does that feel as you're drinking it? Tim has said it's such a small difference between high and low alcohol content. I know it is, because it's sort of 11% to sort of 15, maybe 16%. It's only a tiny percentage difference, but it is incredible how you can sort of, after practicing, guessing exactly what it is to the 0.5%, which is what you got to do in your wine exams. But I will always do it with you. I'll hide the percentage and you can guess it. It's a fun trick. So, what is the finish like on this wine? The important question of the evening: how long can you taste this wine for? Have a sip, swallow it, count how many seconds you can feel those flavours for on your palate before it starts to disappear. And then, ooh, Rachel's put body medium despite fabulous richness. Yeah, I'll accept 7 out of 10. Yeah, medium to medium plus, it's there. It's definitely not full bodied. You can get much, much fuller with these. When you sort of have those Portuguese wines from lower down in the valley, closer to Douro Valley, when it's much hotter, that's when you're getting really, really full bodied. But that's where you're feeling the high altitude. It's rich, but it has this freshness to it. It doesn't feel over egged. It feels like a little bit light inside there. It feels like the cooler mountains. So, Emily said, are red wines typically more acidic than white wines? Because for today's white wine, we've got 4 seconds of acidity. Oh, you got 4 seconds for both? Oh, well, on my white wine for that one, I got 2 seconds for the white wine. And I got more of a 4 seconds for the red wine. So white and red are usually the same acidity. There's no difference between the colour, really. But I just got different answers to you, but that's absolutely fine. Everyone is slightly different. Everyone perceives acidity differently. Everyone perceives every single one of the characteristics differently. So it's very hard to give a wine a definitive answer. So my definitive answer could be slightly different to yours. It always depends on time of day, it depends on the exact person, how hydrated you are. It depends on so many different things that as long as you're within the right bracket, it's fine. So as long as you didn't say low acidity, as long as you can either be medium or medium plus, which means 5 out of 10 to 7 out of 10. And then you're still in the right category and still right. So, Hannah's saying 9 to 10 second finish on this one. Did you, because we said 9 second finish on the last one. About the same. Does everyone else think the same? I think so. I think a lovely long finish again, which is wonderful. I love a long finish. It's so, so good. And it means that when you're having this with food, and my goodness, it'll go well with food. It'll be really, really good. So, what aroma is he getting inside here? Because as soon as I taste this, the very, very first aroma that I smelled was immediate. And I'm hoping that you get the same. It is not one of the first circle aromas. It's definitely one of the second circle aromas. So, we can start with fruits if you want to, but does anybody smell this sort of barnyardy farminess behind this wine? That's what I smell straight away. You open it, you breathe it in, and it's sort of farmy, which is really unusual and really bizarre. And you almost think, surely, why would I like a wine which smells like farms? But it goes back to when we were all cavemen. And when you were hunting around and looking for a place to sort of live and stay and set up camp for a while, if you smelt somewhere that smelt like a farm, smelt like earthiness, smelt like barnyard, then it would switch something in your brain where you go, that smells like people and animals can survive here, so it doesn't smell like danger, and it switches your brain to say, that's a good smell. So even though now we associate farming and barnyard with bad smell, it's actually a whole human feeling where we think it's a bad smell, but it's a safe smell, and we almost sort of lean towards it. When you look at a lot of the very expensive parfumières, the perfumeries in Paris, they always have a slight part of their smells within everything they put into their perfume. There's always a little bit of musk, a bit of earthiness, a bit of farmyardiness, and it just sort of gives an extra complex layer to it. It's not going to smell of pure farmyard, not as much as this one either, but it's an extra layer. It's adding interest. If it just smelled of farm, it wouldn't be very nice, but it's just got such a subtle edge to it. Hannah agrees. Leather. Yes, leather like a stable. Yes, barnyard. Okay, I'm so glad you're all agreeing. Andrew agrees. Lex says smoky / peaty. Definitely on the right lines. That peatiness as well, it's such a distinctive smell. It's like wet, heavy soil, really, really earthy and powerful. This wine is definitely very complex. So even though we've skipped straight to that second circle on the right hand side, it does still have flavours from the left hand side as well, because going back to balance, you need flavours from both. If it was just pure farmyard, it might be too much. But we still have those lovely red fruits and black fruits inside there as well. So there's definitely sort of red cherries, blackberries, cranberries, red currant, diamond barnyards. And I also think there's a little bit of a herbal quality as well. So there's this sort of greenness to the wine. It's like pepper, green pepper, grass, and maybe there's like a little spice to it as well, like not quite cinnamon, but something from a spice cupboard. Black pepper, maybe clove mixed in. Rachel said mulch, but in a good way. Okay, yeah, I get what you mean. Mulchy, yeah. Mulch and fruit. I'm really glad that you don't write the wine descriptions for our wines, because that wouldn't go down well, would it? So, what does everyone think about this wine? I'm going to put a big smiley face. And if you're having it with food, please do send in photos of your food with this wine, because I'm always really nosy basically, and I just want to see. So, what does everyone think about this one? That's my smiley face. You probably can't see it from there, but it's a big smile. And you know what? That is such a lovely wine to have after Le Chapeau Belle. It's like you want to drink Le Chapeau Belle all afternoon, and then as soon as you get some food out and it gets a little bit cooler, go onto the Alvinho with all the glitter and the diamonds in the world, and it'll be wonderful. So, thank you so much to Lucia and Americo for joining us tonight. Thank you for saying hello in the comments as well. And thank you, I think Pedro joined us as well, so thank you to Pedro. But thank you to everyone who came tonight. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions at all, feel free to drop us an email anytime or a message on Instagram. No problem at all. We'll answer anything, almost anything. So Rachel's saying she's not even sorry about it. But Sam and Charlotte love it. I'm really glad. Usually I ask you which one your favourite of the evening was, but I think these two were so different that it's impossible to pick between the two. So they both win tonight. But thank you so much to everyone coming. I do hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you had a lovely evening. And take care. Hopefully I will see you next month. Goodbye everyone. Take care.